right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to the Motion Design Hotline. Thank you all for coming out and hanging out with us on here. We've got a special guest today. Special guest Ben Marriott. Thanks for joining us in the big box.
Thank you so much. It's great to be a lovely guest on your very nice hotline.
I mean, time will tell if you're a lovely guest. I mean,
and if this hotline is very nice.
Well,
this may be a very mean one.
Right.
Well, the cruelest of hotlines today.
But I like that optimism. That's how I like to come into the show. I want to thank everybody out there in the chat who's hanging out with us. It's not a show unless people show up. Some people have already sent in some questions for us to get at you with, Ben. For those who may not be familiar, let's start off the show. People who don't know you, which is weird. What do you do here in the motion design world? And, where might people know you from? Give us your spiel.
All right. Well, I'm a freelance motion designer from Sydney. So I do mainly 2D animation, more illustrative sort of After Effects looking stuff. Don't touch 3D. Draw the line in the sand. That's not, not part of, not going there. And you may know me from doing tutorials on YouTube. I, make tutorials mainly about 2D animation using After Effects, Illustrator, Photoshop, and that type of motion design stuff.
Absolutely. And I will say, these are some of the best, most succinct tutorials that you can enjoy. They are, and you also have like some guests and stuff on your stuff as well. I know there's a lot of like crossover, a lot of collaboration that I see over there, which is great. So definitely, Kyle's filling up the chat with a bunch of links for people to check out. So
yes,
thank you very much.
Dumping those links.
That's right. We're just going to dump those links. But in the chat, if you have questions for Ben about any of the aforementioned sort of topics, then get at us in the chat live. And like I said, some people have sort of dropped questions on us already. So, I mean, by the law of the hotline, we have to get to those first. So that's kind of our.
Well, should we maybe first?
Oh.
I mean, personally, I'd just like to know a little bit about Ben and like where you came from. I don't know. What's your origin story? I know that like for me, I saw your first tutorial about a year ago, right? And you've kind of just been like, boom, all over the place since then. So, and I mean, you seem like a pretty young guy still. You obviously very talented. You know, like a lot about After Effects, a lot about traditional animation. I don't know. Where did you acquire all these things? And
thank you very much. I suppose I started like learning that type of stuff in like university. I did a bachelor's in design over here at the UNSW in Sydney. So it's like a 4-year course where I learned design because if you do art at school and you should do a graphic design degree because that's the only way to turn that into money. So I did that, and then at the end of that degree, I thought, well, design's not really. It's a bit boring. Look, if we're going to be honest, graphic design, it's just rectangles and text. That's all it is. Like at the end of the day, you're drawing text boxes, you're drawing rectangles. And I really wanted to do more illustration. And I found that that's what I put in my work in the uni assignments, and that would get the most attention. Like people seem to like that most, and that got me the best marks. So I thought, well, I like this. I want to pursue this. So I went freelance as an illustrator, straight out of uni, kind of not all that successfully, like enough to keep the lights on. I had a 2-day-a-week job doing web design that kind of paid the bills, and then freelance illustration stuff kind of was extra on top of that. So I did that for about 3 years, and then I got a job offer at a video production studio that wanted me to create illustrations for animation for their explainer videos. And I had noticed that while I was illustrating, I was represented by an illustration agency here in Australia, and I had a little bit of animation skills. I hadn't done much in After Effects, the tiniest bit, but mainly frame by frame stuff in Photoshop that was really basic and awful. I look back at it now and think, what was I thinking? But that sort of work paid the most. That was more in demand than any illustration work, and that was a way, I think, to stand out a little bit more, because I think it's a way more. The illustration field is way more saturated than the animation field, because I think there's a bit more of a barrier to entry because you need to know animation software. You don't just need a pencil and a scanner. And and yeah, so I got a job at a video production company, and I knew a tiny bit of After Effects, and then really liked animation. So over 3 years working in like 2 staff positions, I slowly, took on bigger and bigger projects until 2 years ago I went freelance, and then last year, after my first year of freelance, I decided to make a YouTube channel. So I think what's really benefited my my sort of a career path is kind of something that I didn't plan at all, but that I learned design, illustration, and animation in separate big chunks, where I was like solely dedicated to learning design for 4 years, and then illustration for 3 years, and then probably animation now for 5 years. Because I think it's very hard for people starting up when they've got all of these elements that all seem equally important, and it's really hard to get a handle on each one. But that's a bit about my little backstory.
Well, I mean, I'd say that's the order to do them in, right? Like strong design fundamentals that carry over in anything, right? Like if you have good composition, then when you illustrate things, your compositions are still going to be good, and then when you go to animate it, still great, because all the stuff that I see on like your Instagram and stuff, it's all so well blocked and composed, and like there's no question about where you should be looking, right? There's not a lot of like ambiguity that we see in people who are maybe not design forward, if that makes sense. We see people who really just scattershot. Oh, where's the focus? Who knows? But like with all of your stuff. Oh, I see Kyle is outing himself. That's good.
I'm a video guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because Kyle, you come at it from you're more of a traditional video editing, a little bit of theater background. So it kind of builds up these good skills. But I'm glad you've had this origin story. I'm glad that the Joker did not shoot your designs, and you had to learn to animate them. Those are horrible origin stories. But I don't know. What do you think? You want to jump into some of these cues, some of these questions, because some of them are fairly pertinent there.
You know what? I feel like Ray's question is probably a good one to start with, and it also feels appropriate because we just had Ray on the show. So Ray asked, "What inspired you all?" I think we'll start with Ben, since he's the special person today, to start creating free online content for others. And follow up: while it is an awesome benefit to the community, do you find it helps your own career in some way?
Oh, definitely. That's an awesome question. Thank you, Ray. I very much enjoyed your appearance on the Motion Design Hotline last time, so everyone should go and check that out. Watch through the back catalog.
Don't do it now. Stay here.
No, not now, but later. Bookmark it. It'll be up. Should be up next in the playlist.
Oh, Ben, I just saw everybody run away from the stream.
Come back. Take that video down. Yeah. Well, I suppose it was more the latter. The intention was to improve my career more than it was to generously give knowledge to the masses. That was kind of a secondary result that was kind of less important to me at the time. It was the end of my first year of freelancing, and I'd kind of done well enough at freelancing that I thought when I went freelancing, I was very nervous, am I going to be homeless? Can I make this work? And at the end of the first year, it was okay, I did, enough work that, I was getting, more job offers than I could take. And so I could be a little bit pickier. And I thought, well, my career is either going to go in 2 paths here. I can either increase my rate and take fewer projects on, but there's only so much I can increase my rate. And there's only, so attractive projects can be that come my way. And, I don't have much control over that. So I thought, well, one way to scale the business, to get more money and more creative freedom, would be to, scale my audience and have a bigger audience. And then I have more options to do. Really, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do, maybe in 5-10 years. But I thought if I had a lot of people looking at what I was doing, whether I decided to sell something or make a project of my own, it would be a lot easier. There'd be a lot less barriers. So, and I figured the best way to do that would be to, give away as much valuable information as I could for free, and that would get people's attention. And I figured the most valuable thing I have is my experience in After Effects, like specific specific techniques. Like I'd get so many requests of how I animated grain, and that was always going to be my first tutorial that I made. So I thought, if I do like one tutorial a week for 2 years, at the end of 2 years, surely I'll someone will notice me. And I thought YouTube would be a great place to do that, because I think everyone in our industry like learns almost everything from YouTube, and that like there's not an awful lot of content creators that are really doing great tutorials on YouTube. Like certainly Evan is one, but I figured like it would be a place to that I would eventually get noticed if I stuck at it hard enough. And then like it really took off in the first year that I started doing it. So I thought, well, that's every indication that I should focus more on this and put more of my resources into that. So that was my first that was really the first motivation to get into it. And then now I didn't even think that I was I still don't think I'm a particularly good teacher or anything like that. Like I was just kind of just explained what happened, and then people seem to resonate with it. So, and I'm getting great good like really good feedback. It's really awesome seeing people's sort of examples and people doing the tutorials themselves and turning it into their own work, which is really really exciting to see, that I didn't expect when I started. When I started, I thought put these videos up, get famous, get rich, happy days, kind of. I'm not going to deny that's not a part of it, but
I mean, it's definitely nice to get recognition for, for your knowledge, for sure.
Yes, I think one way to put it was that, like, I think as artists, we all want people to see our work, that we make. That's really the crux of it. We can't really deny that. I certainly don't deny that, and I realized, if I show people how I made what I made, more people are going to watch it. Like I've got way more reactions and attention of people seeing like the breakdowns of how I animated something rather than the animation. So I thought, well, I could spend 4 months making this great personal project and have one chance of people seeing it, when it comes out, and then within 24 hours it's out of the feed and no one remembers it. But I thought if weekly I show people how to do something, I'd get a way to sort of sneak in. Well, while you're learning how to do this, you're looking at my work, and and there would be a little advertisement of, well, you could hire me for, more freelance projects.
Right. And it demonstrates what you're doing.
Yeah, as well. So yeah, that was certainly another part of it in the beginning as well.
Well, that's great, man. Well, I mean, Kyle, you're also on here. Kyle, why are you putting out free content also?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm doing free content. I get paid for some of the content I create, of course, the educational stuff. But I've been running a meetup group for many years too, as I know Evan does as well. And I mean, I've definitely found that, I like doing that anyway, and it's fun to just have excuses to nerd out with other people about this stuff, which is half the fun of doing this show. But, it, like I said, it demonstrates expertise, and people do tend to get in touch with you. I mean, that's kind of part of Ray's question. Like, I've definitely gotten contacted based on presentations I've done, demos I've done, things like that, because it shows that you know what you're talking about. And when people have a problem they don't know how to solve, and they know you know how to solve it.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, it's interesting. The reasons I started making content are not the reasons I continue making content. I think that's fairly true of anyone who gets into the game. Yeah. I mean, originally, this channel was started as an adjunct to a terrible sketch comedy. Not terrible. I don't know. Tim, if you're in the chat, you tell me if you think our old work was terrible. We had some gems, but some were real stinkers. And that was kind of the original idea, because at the time, the template for creating content was a main line of content and then a behind the scenes of content. This is like proto YouTube, early days. I don't even think Google was involved as heavily at that point. So like that was the origin. And the thing is that it has a self-reinforcing cycle, I would see people who would, like you said, like they would ask questions, they would post things that they make, and like that is such a reinforcement. Like, whoa, other people are getting something out of this thing that I made? What? That's great. Because like Ben, I know you're super active on your Instagram. I know you're huge in the comments. I think you almost answer like all the comments that come your way on there, which is great. Like,
Do my best.
right. Look, we can't all be 24 hours on this stuff, but I wanted to ask, like, around this sort of community that's kind of grown up, around you, like, what is it like to sort of, I think you're the inspiration for a lot of people who start getting into it. What is that like?
I like it's weird. It's only like become like I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that. That of like I mean that's definitely what I like. That's definitely a good feeling, and I like that's happening. But it's not something that I like. Really like relish in too much.
Right.
But yeah, like it's great to know that's kind of what's happening, because I suppose I try to tailor my content more towards like stuff that I'm not really seeing too much out there, like a lot, like that there's a lot of tutorials on YouTube that are very just like, hey, here's how to use this effect, and it's very bare bones. It doesn't show like how to use it in context of a designer and animation and how to apply that to a career or for projects. That's why, at least where I can, for most of my tutorials, I like to have a animation or illustration that's used, like that I'm creating or using the effect in, so people can see, well, I could use that in my animation that's got a similar character or achieving that look, rather than like, well, he's applying that to a rectangle. Like my work has circles that won't apply to me, and try to teach in that way. I know I've gone off track there, but that's yeah, I suppose that's how I feel. Like it's great to see so many people work creating things that are based on my tutorials. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, granted, one Commonwealth person shouldn't have asked another about emotions today. That's not how.
Yes, yeah, I know.
That's a huge faux pas among our peoples, but no, I don't know. It's one of the elements that keeps me coming back. We got some more questions in the queue here. So
yeah,
let's queue them.
I've got one I like here.
Okay.
So we've got one from Sandro, friend of the show, formerly known as Blankatito. Love to know how you three got so good at effects. There are so many, and again, this is something I specifically noticed about some of your tutorials, Ben. You have a good mind for like effects recipes, it seems like. So yeah, I don't know, maybe any thoughts about kind of how you figured out that kind of expertise, and the part I like the most, what are your most underrated effects that you use a lot?
Oh, okay. Well, I think I use a lot of effects, I guess, but they're all, I suppose, relatively similar. I find I use the same 10 effects.
I totally do too.
All the time, turbulent displays, posterized time. There's always jokes in my comments about like, time to use posterized time on this layer. Like, like I should just start every comp in 12 frames per second. But
that's right.
I really try to, I suppose, see them as, I think I've kind of learned to sort of like dissect issues and like think of like, I think it's just experience, using effects. Then you realize, okay, if I use this, I could warp this into this effect. So trying to problem solve that, okay, well, I need the white areas in this image to glow. So like one way to do that is, like without a glow effect or, something, create the white areas like brighter. You might, well, I could create I could do that with a Lumimat. So I could create a new layer, and then, well, I could, turn, desaturate that, and then, add curves to increase the contrast, and then, blow out the whites with some other reason, and just try to seeing it like, I don't know, I see it as like sort of, like I think you just got to add like a recipe, like trying to, what effects can I use to get, the effect I want? And I think that's just, experience, just playing with like, how am I just having problems come your way and just having to solve them with like limited, like, a limited toolkit. And then I suppose you figure out which ones are useful and then how to use them like that. I don't have any particular, techniques for learning how to use that, but I suppose, just making lots of stuff.
I think at the beginning of your glitch tutorial that just came out, you said you looked at a couple like stock projects and kind of reverse engineered them. Is that something you do a lot?
That's something when I see like awesome work, I'm like, how did they do that? And I love the Vimeo. You can scroll frame by frame, and that's really awesome to see the like what you think like, oh, that's some crazy effect. When you go through frame by frame, it's like, oh, that's just 3 frames where a triangle intersects with the circle, and it looks like this smooth motion because of all of this, lead up and anticipation. But yeah, trying to like see other people's work and just think like, well, how did they do that? Because they have the same tools that I do. It's not like they're not, sacrificing goats to get this, to get this effect.
I mean, they might be.
They might be. There's some people, I think, they might be doing some work. You had Greg Stewart on. That's definitely, he's got some. he must have a closet full of skeletons with this animation. That's definitely something, trying to dissect and figure out, well, how do they do it? Because we've all got After Effects and Photoshop and Illustrator, and maybe they've got Houdini or Particular or something that's expensive, but most of the time they don't.
Yeah, and I mean that kind of reverse engineering is prior to about 2008 or so, that was really the only way to actually like figure things out, because we didn't have Video Copilot, and internet video was barely a thing. I don't know, my years are probably a little wonky here, but I don't know, it's still very helpful. Like, don't there's not always going to be a tutorial for everything, and it's not always going to tell you exactly the way you want the thing to be. It's good to explore and figure things out for yourself so you can kind of put your own spin on it too.
Yeah, I love that. I love, Ben, when you were talking about how effects used to like solve problems, right? Like each effect is going to change the previous thing in some way. And the only real way to know what direction you want to go is if you kind of are a little bit intimately familiar with how the effects work and how they're going to play off of each other. And it is one of the things that you really have to experiment and play with more, right? It's that's why experimentation time is so critical. And so, however, I don't want to get away from the heart of the question. Ben, what is your most underrated effect? If you had if you had to nominate one to go up on the Hall of Fame.
Well, I think like most of the effects that I use are pretty in high regard. We've got curves, we've got blur,
right?
Like,
classics.
Like I used radial blur on a project recently, and that was really good. I really like that was. I'm looking for a reason to use that again, but it's not all that useful. But like posterized time, I'd say I use it like it's something that I didn't know it existed and really never used it until I found out about it, and then I use it for everything. Maybe to my detriment. It's like it's just lower frame rate, Ben. It's not that bad, but like I just use it I just use it for everything.
Well, Ben, I'm just going to write down that Ben nominates posterized time onto our bracket that we will resolve at the end of the year.
What's your answer, Evan?
Oh, my answer. What am I going to put up there? I think, in terms of the one that gets the most play out of me, frig. I'm going to put Gaussian blur up on it. I think that is the number one blur, best blur. Now that it has been juicing in the gym with its GPU acceleration, it's really hard to keep that guy down. And it used to be fast blur. That was my big winner. But you know what? He's on the bench now. So it's interesting that these are like the most basic. Who do you nominate? Oh, I picked the most basic ass thing to throw over there. So it's pretty wild. Pretty wild with that stuff. Let's see. What else?
I know you didn't ask, but I'm going with CC Composite today.
Kyle, you can't have multiple nominations to the board.
What was my other one?
You know what? If you had another one, we're going to replace it with this one.
Done.
Okay. So CC Composite for Kyle, and I'm picking Gaussian blur, and of course we have posterized time now.
Fight.
We'll have to go back to the records to figure out what Greg put down, but we're getting, and we're seeing some in the chat. Some people are saying, "Oh, you gotta get set mat in the mix." So
yep,
there's a lot of good things. In fact, in the chat, you let us know which one you'll nominate up to the lists, and we'll see how that goes down. Taking it to the boards though, I did want to get, because we did have some of these earlier questions, right, that came in. We had a very long one from Sinead out of Ireland, and there's a lot of things to parse out of this, but she's asking a lot of questions about sort of using animation in theater and stuff. But one of the big things that she was asking about is when do you know that a piece has all of the stuff. Like when it's full and not to overdo a thing, right? Because Ben, I'm sure you can throw all kinds of embellishments on a thing. Like even when you're just illustrating something, right? Like how much detail is too much, or how many elements in a scene are too many. Like what would your advice be, Ben, for someone who's looking to rein their design in a little bit?
Oh, like that's something that I struggle with all the time. Like I can show you some examples later of like I think that's a crutch that I lean into of like, well, I'll just add more detail. That'll make people think it's good. Yeah, like people won't think I'm at least like lazy. Like, oh no, you put in work. I can see work has gone into this. Like it's a very easy way to demonstrate like value. Like no, there's lots of detail, lots of lines. So this is very good. But I think experience. I think like I can't remember what the saying is where before you go out you should take off one accessory. So I think it's always too much, but it certainly for me I tend to put more in than is necessary and always have to rein it back. And normally like sleeping on it, like looking back at it with more time than when you actually were making it is really good, because I'll be like making it that day and like, oh well, then I'll add this glow. Oh yeah, looks great with glow on it. And then the next day I'll look at it and go, no, I didn't need that glow. That's distracting. And I think you can get caught up in the moment when you're just trying to add production value to what you make. And there's certainly I've been, especially in staff positions where I've worked at, where the budgets were small, the deadline was tight. We've just got to make it look expensive to the client so they feel justified. So we're like, all right, got to get some light sweeps on this.
Yep.
Got to add, we need gradients. Nothing can be flat, like all of those things. And now I look back at them and I'm like, it all looks trashy. Like I certainly have my tropes like that I kind of put on everything. Like, all right, if it's not looking very good, just a bit of a texture over the top, just some like white little speckles bouncing around. That'd be great. And some roughen edges on on some shapes to make them look like they were hand drawn, and
I believe we call that
time,
a style.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
If you call it tropes, it sounds lame, but
Yes.
say, yeah, that's my style.
That's my style.
Then you're cool.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
It is really interesting, like when we think about, in traditional animation, there's this idea of, what are we actually going to put in the frame, right? You don't need to have everything. If the narrative is about, a duck who's stuck in the mud, really, just don't draw everything else. Duck, mud, you're done. It's that easy, right? And everything else is extemporaneous to the scene. I mean. One thing, Ben, if you wouldn't mind, I know you've got something interesting up on your screen. I'd love to throw to that just real quick, because it kind of illustrates some of what we're talking about.
Perfect. So
we'll just. Oh no! Now I've forgotten which button I press. I nailed it. Okay. So, for example, like I know this is we'll get into what these are examples of. Later on. But I love, for example, because this frame has been staring at me in the switcher, how it's so apparent what the hierarchy of information is, right? You got the character who is full and bright in the middle. The background elements are more subdued. They're lines and shapes, like this to me shows that kind of discipline that we're talking about in terms of taking your accessories off before you leave the house. As a man who wears no accessories, very difficult for me. But I wonder if you could talk me through maybe just a little bit about like the design considerations that kind of go into a scene like this when you're putting it together.
Definitely, and I think all of those things should come together in design. Like when I was first learning animation, I was so keen to just get into After Effects. I can figure it out in there and create what I need to in After Effects. But like now I try to like really set aside time that like now I'm just designing in Photoshop and Illustrator. I'm not animating this till tomorrow. That's not my concern, because I think when you're trying to when you're adding stuff in animation, in the animation process, it's stuff that's not as considered. It's like a last minute kind of like, well, trying to save this. But I think
the light sweeps.
Yeah, exactly. But I think when it's considered from the beginning, you don't run into that problem as much, because I know it's going to look like this, and this is already been approved by the client, or by yourself if it's a personal project. And yeah, this example is great. I didn't design this. This is designed by Yana Abramova, like an awesome designer in Illustrator. but I did the animation for this here, and that's definitely we've got a main character here, and we just focused on the motion here. We've got a little bit of examples in the background, but that's about it. And you mentioned some of my other work, and I'll show you. I've got another example pulled up that kind of demonstrates like all of that. So this is like I think most of my self-initiated projects that I posted on Instagram last year, and you'll notice they all follow a very similar formula. Like you mentioned that in all my work you kind of know where to look, and one of my crutches is to just put it in the middle. Just put it in the middle, and there's going to be no question about where to look. So you'll notice like all my things pretty much have something in the middle that's of higher contrast to the background. The background tends to be either really colorful or black, and then there's lots of shadows, like the widest area and the darkest area are all in the middle. So that's something that I tend to do as well. And also I've got another example here. Here's one where I kind of went overboard on detail, and I think it kind of works here. But this is something that I thought, well, I was drawing this piece of toast with some melting butter, and then of course I decided to add a face to it. And then I thought, well, that's looking too basic, so I added all this detail. And I like to think that that's kind of okay to do sometimes. Like here, I think that if you removed all that detail, it still reads as what it is. Like you could imagine this as a two-color like logo. If we zoom out really small, you can still read, oh, that's a piece of toast with butter and a face. Maybe it could do with some more contrast on the edges of this butter, so that reads. But other than that, that's one of, like I said, it's a crutch that I tend to go resort to, where I think this design isn't looking how I want it to. Let's just add a whole bunch of detail and shading so it looks like I've done something. Because I have a lot of experience sort of rendering things in sort of with lots of lighting. So I know that I can just as a last resort, I can pull that out of my pocket and do something like this. I really love. I think I have another example here. Like here's one of some chicken nuggets I did for I think Valentine's Day last year.
That's
is a lot. Yeah, and this one
–
is a lot more considered in the design. Like there's no gradients, or like all the shading is done through real flat colors. And this takes a lot more thought and a lot more time. And I don't know whether it pays off more, but like I find my best work is when I'm really confident in saying, look, it doesn't need anything more. And still, this has a bunch of textures and a bunch of stuff as well that I'm like, no, but it needs a little bit more because people won't know. Like when you see like any sort of logo, like when you see how is this logo worth $30,000 or $300,000 whenever there's a rebrand for something, like, well, no actual like combination of pixels is worth that much. It's the thought and the decision and what its purpose is that costs all the money. So, but whenever I have something that like looks really minimal, like I know that it might be a stronger design, but it's going to be harder to communicate that. So that's why I think I resort to some of these other things.
Well, I think they work, man.
Sense.
Like I love that idea to like zoom away from the thing, right? Pull back. A lot of people say like, oh, squint, right? Or to make it blurry. There are other considerations like you just put a tint filter over everything, you see it in black and white, right? So you get a feel for the color of things and the tonal arrangement. It's all of these like big picture zoomed out things. I know that a lot of your stuff ends up on Instagram. Are you considering sort of the viewing environment often? Like people are going to be swiping this on their phone, so is that like part of the process sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I can't deny that is. I kind of, ideally we live in a world where we just create what we want to create, and it'll, the world will, see it in its best possible way. Like,
right.
But like, I just illustrate everything in a square format now because it's going to go on Instagram.
Yeah.
And when I'm doing the tutorial, I've got like After Effects windows taking up the left and right. So I rarely do like 16:9 stuff these days, unless it's, gonna live somewhere that requires that. And yeah, you can see all of these. They all have bright colors. Like my work, like ages ago, used to be a lot more subdued. I have a few examples of some of my earlier illustration work where it's a lot more, I suppose, dull. It's nowhere near as saturated. All of these were like colored with gradient maps. And then I did a lot more sort of, it was grayscale with one color. And then now it's more like really like a lot more colored. And because, I think it, grabs people's attention when they're scrolling. And it's not something that, like I'm like, well, I need to make this really bright because it'll get attention. But it's like, well, I could make it black and white, but I think I avoided color so early in my career a lot. Like with these ones where I just colored with gradient maps, it's because colors are hard to do. It's hard to pick colors. So I would just lean towards doing black and white because it's a little easier for it, for it to look good. And like you said with the values, like I would illustrate these like all in black and white. Let's see if we can desaturate them. So they would all look like this. So I'd get my values and my contrast where I wanted them to be, and then just chuck a gradient map over the top.
That's interesting. So one thing I was going to say, like, as your work goes, it becomes both cuter and more grotesque at the same time in a way.
Yes, yeah, it does. So this is what the work I was doing when I was like working as an illustrator. Like this is stuff, people weren't paying me to illustrate like this. This is the stuff I was doing in my free time. Like, so it's really textured, and like all of this inking was done like by hand with brush pens, and then I'd scan it in and scan in textures and build it all in Photoshop. And then like as I got more into like, and then you see this and I'm like, well, how would I animate that? That's going to be really difficult because of maintaining all of this style while animating like that. So my style is like slowly evolved to integrate more color and geometric shapes while trying to still combine a lot of texture as well and more of a handmade feel. But that's been a long journey. Like at the beginning it was all well, the only thing you can animate is vector shapes because that's all I saw. So I learned how to animate like that. And I think the last 5 years has been me trying to learn how to make stuff animated in After Effects not look like obviously that it was animated in After Effects.
Well, I think it's great, and I hope that it helps. I hope it helps people out there. I love that someone said, I don't know if you sell a lot of merch, Ben, but someone's got a great idea that a shirt that just says "Colors are hard," and I can already imagine the horrifying color palette you could just use.
Yes.
That would be great. I love that. Yes. I'll make a note of that.
Yeah. Oh, maybe let's workshop. Instead of colors are hard, how about colors be hard? That maybe.
I like it. And I'll have the E backwards.
That's right. Perfect. Like a charming lemonade stand.
I should point out that this is colors, though, the way Evan would spell it. And do you Australians also put that U in there?
Of course we do. We're not.
You weirdos.
We're not savages.
Yeah. Kyle, I'm afraid you're the odd man out now.
You know what? It's efficiency. We save a whole letter.
It's a lazy mouth, Kyle. That's what it is.
Colors.
Well, this has been a very colorful exchange. Kyle, what else you got in the form for?
Well, maybe I'm just playing favorites. This is from Nick Shale, who actually runs my meetup group with me. But a question for Ben: which of your tutorials do you feel hasn't gotten the views you wish it would?
Oh, every single one of them. No, there's definitely a few that I'm like, I thought, ones that I've worked. I'm sure you have the same feeling, Evan and Kyle. You put so much work into one tutorial and somehow, that one doesn't hit. But like, something you thought about in a few minutes that you just whipped up. People love that. Gets caught up in the algorithm and people sing its praises. There's a few like one example. Like I did this sort of series breaking down this sort of coffee animation I did, but I broke it up into 3 parts because it was really complicated. First part did really well. It was one of my first videos that kind of like took off, more than the other ones and got like over 100,000 views in the first few weeks. I'm like, this is amazing. Part 2 is going to kill it. Part 2, like similar name, similar thumbnail. Like it's like obviously this is more of this. Nothing at all. Silence, crickets. So I'm like, oh well, part 3, you're not getting that, everyone. So when I counted on you most, you weren't there. No. Everyone who's watching this, you're the real ones. I'll do it.
You didn't pay attention to part 2, so I'm not giving you part 3.
And they're like, oh, you want to know how that splash is made? Should have watched part 2.
Yep.
Should have told your friends. Should have smashed.
Well, they still can.
Yeah.
I love that there's an expiry date. Like, you know what? If 100,000 people don't watch this in a week, I'm not doing part 2. This should make that's gonna be a policy moving forward. I love that. I've decided to gamify watching tutorials. I mean, this is a little bit of little bit of YouTube on YouTube action around here. I know this is the inside baseball people come for.
It is. I'm trying to think. There's been a couple of. I did one with Johan Eriksson, which is a collaboration where he did this awesome design and I animated, and I thought that was that deserved a few more views. I thought.
Man, when I look at my stuff, there is one video that vexes me that people did not watch it a lot. I'll tell you. I mean, there's a few reasons why. One is an analytics reason, because there is a tutorial on my channel that talks about making things react to audio. This is an old tutorial and it is bad. I do not like it. I wish it did not exist and it was not popular. But it is. But it doesn't complete the thought, right? So it's like, I know, I'm going to do the better version. I'm going to do the version that is complete and full, so that every question that was asked of that first video will be answered in this one. People are going to love it. And that is reacting to audio in After Effects, a thing that people hate.
Well, and how much longer is this one that actually answers all the questions?
Look, it is a grotesque, over 20 minutes long, and it's very purgeable. It's something you want to avoid, I guess. But I was so like, I know this is gonna nail it. In my mind, I was like, if I needed to react to audio, this is what I need. Because I'm a huge nerd, right? I'm like, I just can't wait to nerd out for 20 minutes.
Well, and as you said, you got a bunch of questions on the first one asking you all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And so you want to address it. I'm definitely someone that likes to explain all the things. But then you have a half-hour long tutorial.
That's right. Just relishing in my own crupulence, So, and John Colombo is asking, does it spark joy? John, it does not. So I'm going to Marie Kondo that into the bin. No, I can't delete it. People actually like that one, even if I don't like it, because it's not for me. Okay, what else we got going on here? I know we got you for another about 15 minutes or so. So we're about 10 minutes away from the lightning round. Ben, are you ready for the lightning round?
I'm ready.
So we have a question or two about doing some work with Buck, and I'll hold the rest. There's a good one that kind of dovetails nicely off that, but I don't know, just it's less of a question. It's more just kind of mentioning that happened. I guess thoughts about that, or working with big name studios. How does one kind of get in touch with places like that people dream about working?
Well, it's definitely, overall thoughts, it was a good thing. Yeah, it was really great working at Buck. It's definitely the best place I've ever worked. The work we made was, the best animation that I've been a part of. And and just the work experience was great. It was the first time where I've, worked in a studio where the design and the animation, the craft was, was as important as, getting paid by the client. And that was really refreshing. It was the first time that I've had actual proper time to animate things, try to come up with designs and animations that are the best solution, not just the first solution, which was definitely my experience working in staff positions where we've got to get this done by midday. So, you get this, you get the light sweeps. But I think I first got in touch. I spoke to Gareth, the creative director at NodeFest, which is a motion design conference down in Melbourne, Australia. That's every November. So if everyone's in the Asia Pacific region or willing to take a long flight, you should definitely come to that. It's an awesome conference. And I think I met him there, so we got acquainted there briefly. But and then I think at the beginning of last year, I started freelancing for them, and I think just sort of I was friends with some of the junior animators there that I'd kind of just messaged online on Instagram, that we saw each other's work and commented and messaged occasionally. And I assume at some point they were asking hey, do we know any other 2D animators in the city? And then I assume my name popped up at some point, and they saw my reel and liked it. That's as much input as I went in there. I shared my reel with them the year before. I applied for a job there a couple of years before and got rejected. So there's it's not just because you don't get a job there doesn't mean it's not there forever. At the time I was not very good, so it was a good decision by them. But,
and very much like when you get your face out there, when you meet people, people realize like, oh, they're a cool person. It makes them much more likely to, I mean, one, remember you, but B, want to be around you if you're talented and they like you. Boom.
Exactly. Yeah, people are far more likely to hire you if they know you. Like if they've worked with you before, that's even better, and they can attest to your work. But if you know them, that's going to be like even just like it's an easier email to send to talk to someone who've already spoken to before instead of just going out into the ether.
Yeah. See, Evan, you need to leave the house more, but not right now.
No, don't do that. Do not. I don't know. I think that's true. Like, I don't know. All my client stuff has been through word of mouth and that kind of grassroots networking thing. So it's been the old school things are true. It's not. There's no secret to it. You just have to be present. It's the hardest thing to be, though. Very difficult.
So there's a follow up to that from Matt Ramos, which is different from the couple people who asked about the first part. I'd love to know what your dream project is, either with certain other designer or studio.
That's right, Ben.
All
Earlier
right.
we asked you about your emotions. Now we're going to ask you about your dreams.
Okay, my dream. Well, I kind of do have a plan for like a dream project. So at the moment, I've kind of been working on behind the scenes, so maybe 6 months, a big collaborative project with I think we've got 50 animators involved, and so like hopefully like I've got all of next week scheduled to finish it off, and then send it to sound design. So hopefully it comes out end of May, early June. It's codename Project Manticore as well. Just so get the code name out there because it's good to have a cool code name. People remember that. It sounds.
Yeah.
It won't be called that when it's out there, but it's good. I'd like to share that as much as possible because that's a much cooler name. And so for that,
Project Manticore.
I contacted a lot of animators that I know and a lot that I don't. Then say, hey, do you want to work together? And we all animate a little scene as part of a theme for this project. And kind of the goal for that is to show, I think it was while I was working at Buck, like I remember like thinking I'm friends with these people. I reckon if we just if we wanted to, we could just get together and make an animation, that the client's paying, $300,000 for this 30-second spot, but we could do it on our own, and we could create that, the same value, but for us. So I kind of want to do something like that, like get as many, skills and different artists as possible, and create something unique. And hopefully, when I release this, like I'm going to release one of these like Project Manticores every year for as long as I can, a big collaborative project, and making them different each year, but like also because it's a way for me to make a bigger project because I'm making weekly YouTube tutorials, there's not much time for me to invest in like a 2-minute long, short film or anything like that. And I don't get to collaborate with many people. So this is a way for me to be part of a bigger thing without, committing months of my life to it. And then hopefully the idea would be, hopefully maybe in a couple of years or so, a big, cool client, that has, will see it and think that looks awesome. Here's a whole lot of money, go and make it something similar, and then I can say that's great, get 10 animators that I think would be great for it, say here's 10 grand each, go and animate 5 seconds of something awesome, like on this theme, I've storyboarded it, you go nuts, you do what you want to do, and then we make something that's a bit bigger than ourselves. So that's kind of a dream project that I'm planting the seeds of at the moment.
Oh, well, you heard your first, folks. Project Manticore.
Breaking news.
We break news here on the hotline. Oh man, I love those things that are like I don't know, like do you remember the Yule log project? Remember that? That was a great showcase of like so many different takes on a similar theme that I thought were really good. And I know that I don't think it's still going, but what am I thinking of, Kyle? There was like a brief all the time.
Yes. I'm totally blanking on it too. There is one going now. There's a Reddit called Coffee and Keyframes, I think, that has kind of inherited some of that. But yeah, a lot of those projects, they're around for a couple years and then they, it's just a lot to keep up with a lot of times. So
lose that juice.
Yeah.
You gotta make sure you keep the juice.
The Yule log was definitely a big inspiration for that, and the Doodle project and other similar things.
Motion Corps.
Right. Well, Kyle, do you want to take another one from the thing? Do we need to get a lightning round?
I have a good one before lightning round.
Okay.
So we got a couple questions about your motion design school course. Speaking of spending months building something, probably, right? And just thought it might be, I don't know, maybe a good moment to talk about that experience a little bit. The course itself, obviously, we can give it a little plug here too. And there's a question from owner about, do you have plans for more courses?
Yeah, for sure. So the course I've done is called Motion Practice. It's with Motion Design School. It's sort of a practical course about teaching frame-by-frame basics. So it's like how to start animating frame by frame, but with the goal of integrating that into an After Effects workflow. So if you're like a motion designer, you do a lot of After Effects work, but frame by frame, something that's new to you. Hopefully, the goal of this course is to, by the end of it, you can say, hey, I can do frame by frame animation. You can add, some of it to your client work and add it to your portfolio. So I think, it's 6 lessons. Each one, we've got it's a different project where we tackle, first the basics, then run cycles, then effects, and then sort of rotation, and then morphing. And it sort of just, covers, all the topics, with enough knowledge that you need to, to understand it and create your own stuff. But then I suppose, work it into After Effects. Because a lot of it, it's a lot of time I use frame by frame. It's like, it's not economical for the client to do the whole thing frame by frame because it's very expensive and time consuming. So it's more about knowing when to use it effectively. Like, I do a lot of I find the more I learn about frame by frame, the more sort of I rough out all my animation frame by frame. Not all of it, but a lot of it. If it's a complex movement, I find it quicker for me to, I can draw 5 frames and get a sense of the motion rather than having to keyframe 20 things in After Effects. And if it doesn't work, I've wasted a lot of time and, it's not as hard to adjust, whereas I can just delete a frame and I go, oh, well, what if the arm stretches longer? And it's just a couple of lines. And it's sort of about the trying to show as much as that process, like, well, here's how to get started in frame by frame, and here's how to take it in After Effects and make your whole scene look like it was considered together. It's not just there's this gooey transition over the top of these static rigid shapes.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's a good plug. The link is in the chat there if folks want to give that a peruse.
It is. Thank you for the plug. And it's 40% off. 40% off for the near future and indefinitely while quarantine is happening. So 40% off. What a bargain. Always good selling.
Yeah, and I mean it's nicely paced out. 1 lesson per week. It's gonna be great. You're gonna have a good time. So
yeah, you can see like lots of the students' work. If I'll be posting. I post a lot of them in my stories, and I'm going to post a big compilation probably next week. But like some of the student work coming out is really really good.
Yeah. Something to do while we're hanging at home.
Exactly.
All right.
And do you have any other courses that you're working on or planning on doing?
I'm not currently working on any because I worked for 2 months on this and like it was the most intense 2 months of my life and almost broke me. Yeah. But so I know like I needed like a big okay, this is out, let's recalibrate. Yeah. But definitely I'll be doing more courses in the future. I would love to do like an advanced After Effects one, like how to take yourself from a beginner or an intermediate After Effects person and just put everything I know about After Effects and linear progression. That'll probably be a much bigger course that's longer, and I'll ideally produce that over a series of months and not in one intense period. So that's what I'm planning to do at the end of maybe mid next year, maybe. We'll see. And I would love to do like a basics of After Effects as well, because that's something I get requests of. But let me know in the chat like if there's anything you particularly want a course on.
It's like course design, I find. It's just like so taxing to say what goes in, what doesn't go in. How do we do this succinctly? How do we structure this? It's so much more than just doing the job. How would I teach this to someone and at what level? And oh goodness me. Now I'm getting stressed.
Well, are you stressed enough for an advanced lightning round?
Well, Kyle, you and I don't need to be stressed. We're asking the question.
That's true. Are we? Well, I don't know how many questions I have.
Okay, fine.
I might throw them back. Know.
Please do.
All right. What do we got here? Okay.
Yeah, you want to do some of this?
I'll give you 3-word replies to each of these.
Perfect.
First. And then a longer one if that's required.
Okay.
3 words.
Question number 1. Here we go. Matt Ramos yells, Ben, how old are you?
Ben, how old are you?
How old are you?
I am 28.
I am 28. Okay, that fits. Okay, good. Satisfied?
Yeah.
Well, this
to
was a
stretch
much
that
larger
out.
question that's going to be entertaining to answer in the short format. Sandro, quick tip to get into and out of run cycles. He finds that quite hard.
3 words.
Don't. It's hard.
Don't. It's
like-
hard. You nailed it.
Like I don't think I've ever animated a character coming in and out of a walk cycle because it's really difficult. There's a lot of things you've got to consider. My things are either always in motion, like whenever a client comes and says, well, we'll have a character walk into a crowded room, you're like, oh, okay, whoa. We have a close-up of a character's head bobbing, and then we have a wide shot of, an icon representing what the room represents. Like, it's walk cycling and character animations I tend to, especially in client projects, not avoid, find a way to communicate that more effectively. And yet, starting walking and stopping walking is really tricky. I don't have specific advice on that.
So this should be interesting for the lightning. Sorry, did you have something, Evan?
Well, I was going to say, like, that is actually the perfect advice, right? Like, just disguise it with a few cuts. That's what we would do. That's what you would do in film, right? When you don't want to show something that's messy or, is going to break continuity, we just mix it up with a couple of shots. And wouldn't you know it? No one ever notices.
Yeah, there's very few occasions where it would be necessary for the story for someone to, begin, walking.
I think whenever you watch, I don't know if you're an anime fan, Ben, or, cartoons in general, but often because the budget is such a huge thing with those shows, with any animated production, it's like, okay, how long is it going to take to actually grind out the 25 frames it required to do this hard stop, right? Like, or do we push that into an action piece, or do we find a way to work around these limitations? Like, it's all about kind of being generous to your time, and how can you actually convey the information effectively without having to do terrible things. So
yeah, and I think there's also like an opportunity cost for investing in stuff like that, because if you're spending a day animating a character, getting out of a chair and starting to walk, you could put that into like an amazing sort of title sequence or something really, really gripping that could be more effective.
Yeah. Most of the time, don't forget about editing techniques, and use your time in the places that it matters.
Okay.
So this should be interesting to answer very quickly. From Ricky, what should someone like me, Ricky, need to do to help nab your very first motion design job if you have zero professional experience?
Make much work. I think
okay, that's another perfect answer.
Yeah, like make a lot of work. That's your best chance of getting work out there. If you just make one thing every year, there's only, you've got one chance of winning the lottery. But if if you make something every week, you got 52 lottery tickets that might attract the attention of a client. I think, be present, like online, have a portfolio ready, but really just email a lot of people, that you think might be hiring a motion designer. Like, don't hire the same person every week, but get a list of any companies in your city, because people are more likely to hire locally, even if you're working remotely. That's going to be a better option. One thing I do is I certainly used to do a lot more when I was freelancing. We have a creative sort of job board in Australia called The Loop, and I just subscribe to it for every graphic design position, not even motion design, because if they're hiring graphic designers, they might need to make something move eventually. Mm-hmm. So I thought, and you just find out the companies that do design and there's thousands of it in Sydney, and Sydney's, like it's a big city in Australia, but not compared to the US or anywhere like that. So there's way more companies than you think out there. But you just got to find out where they are, and try to sort of email them and show your work to as many people as you can.
No, I love that idea of not just sending to places that only do motion, right? Like if somewhere, especially if there are like agencies around, like we do print. Oh yeah, well, have you ever wanted to pitch this to your clients? Because that's where the world's going. So think about it. Go where it's not where it is. That, you know what? That was too many words. I disqualified myself from lightning round.
Go not is. Yeah, that's all you get.
Well shortened. Okay, what else? What else we got in here?
Question for Ben: would you be interested to explore projection mapping?
Yes, I would.
There you go.
Yes, I would. He nailed it.
It seems I did one project that was kind of projection mapped, like ages ago for it was like from an advertising award ceremony for like Twitter, so he made something for that. But it was really just like, hey, here's a stencil that you like animate within this box. Like, okay, we didn't have to do anything complicated. Yeah, I would like it. It seemed like a lot of a lot of hard work to learn, which that shouldn't be put you off for anything, because everything that's worth doing is hard to learn typically. Yes, I would like to do it, but it's not at the top of my list. I've got more things, more prescient than that at the moment.
And there's one more question on here. This is for the two of you. Kyle Zager is asking, is Evan a weeaboo? So Kyle, Ben, I'm going to ask both of you to weigh in if you think Evan is a weeaboo.
I vote no.
I wholeheartedly, I do. I think, yes, absolutely.
Very divided.
Yes, of course.
Well, to find out the truth, you'll have to tune in next week.
We got to leave them on a cliffhanger. It's perfect.
That's how we do it on this show. I think that's it. I think that's all the things we got time for. We got to let Ben go and start his day. It's the start of the day in Australia, so Ben's got stuff to do, I'm sure.
How did we get through this whole show and never address the fact that you are technically speaking to us from the future?
I am. Like, it's wild out here. Saturday morning, you won't be prepared for it. Like,
I don't want to hear that. I'm not ready for more things I'm not prepared for.
Don't worry, it won't affect your Crunchyroll subscription, Evan.
It better not, because if I can't watch, no. See, now I'm blanking.
See, I was right.
Yeah. Sorry, I bailed. Yuri on Ice. There we go. That's got to be kind of obscure. Anyway. Ben, I want to thank you so much for coming and being on the show. This has been a hoot. It's always a good time, and hopefully, we see more of you around here. You never know.
I'd love to be back. Thank you so much for having me on. It was great. I look forward to especially the end of year bracket of the best effects.
Yeah, well, we're gonna have to bring you on to defend your choice. So
absolutely.
Before you go though, where can people find out more about you? Where can people get involved? More plugs about stuff. I know we've got your Instagram up on screen right now, but what are all the places people should go to look for you?
Perfect. Instagram and YouTube are where I'm most active. YouTube, we've got weekly tutorials every Thursday, sometimes Monday as well. Ooh. And Instagram, I'm there. If you can message me on there, I'll try to reply. As properly as I can.
Get them on the grams.
And of course, that's the best way to find me. And motiondesign.school, you can find my course on there.
Awesome. Cool. As usual, I've been Evan Abrams. I guess I continue to be Evan Abrams here with Kyle Hamrick. Kyle, where can people find more about you?
I'm on Twitter as Kylosaurus Rex or KyleHamrick.com.
Kaboom. And as you know, you can find more of my junk here on this channel if you wish. And subscribe for more things like this every week. Thank you, everyone, for coming out and hanging out with us, and Ben, of course. And, this is where I try to find the button that plays the outro. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Well,